January 12, 2026, 9:47 a.m. South China Sea. The U.S. Navy destroyer USS Mustin conducts routine freedom of navigation operation near disputed islands claimed by China, Philippines, Vietnam, and Taiwan. International waters. Legal transit. Standard patrol American vessels have conducted for decades, asserting the principle that no nation owns the oceans, that international law governs maritime boundaries, that freedom of navigation isn't negotiable. Then 3 Chinese warships appear on radar, moving fast, closing from different directions, and in 12 minutes, those warships will position themselves directly in the Mustin's path, will refuse to move, will demand the American destroyer leave what they call Chinese waters, will trigger an 8-hour standoff at 500 yards where both sides maintain battle stations with weapons aimed, where neither side fires but both sides prepare to, where one miscalculation could start a war neither government wants but both militaries are ready to fight. What happens in those 8 hours isn't just about 2 navies facing off. It's about what the Chinese ships were really doing, why they positioned exactly where they did, and what their sudden dispersal after 8 hours reveals about orders from Beijing that changed mid-standoff. Because those 8 hours weren't about territorial claims or international law. They were about testing, measuring, calculating, and what China learned will shape every future encounter in these contested waters. The numbers seem straightforward. 1 American destroyer against 3 Chinese warships. USS Mustin, Arleigh Burke class, 9,000 tons, Aegis combat system, Tomahawk missiles, advanced sensors, experienced crew, 3 Chinese warships, 2 destroyers, 1 frigate, similar armaments, similar capabilities, numerical advantage but not overwhelming. The tactical situation was tense but balanced. Neither side had decisive advantage. Neither could guarantee victory without unacceptable losses. Both could inflict severe damage. Both would suffer if shooting started. That mutual vulnerability should have prevented confrontation, should have encouraged both sides to maintain distance, should have kept this professional and routine. But nothing about January 12th was routine, because this wasn't random encounter, wasn't spontaneous interception, wasn't tactical decision by local commanders. This was planned, coordinated, executed with precision that revealed orders from highest levels. And those orders weren't about preventing American transit. They were about something more calculated, more strategic, more dangerous in long term. Commander Lisa Park commanded the Mustin, 14 years Navy, 4 deployments to Western Pacific. She knew these waters, knew Chinese tactics, knew that People's Liberation Army Navy had become increasingly aggressive. Close approaches, dangerous maneuvers, radio warnings claiming sovereignty over international waters, but always maintained minimum separation, always avoided actual blocking, always let American ships continue after making their point. The harassment was annoying, dangerous, but manageable. This felt different. Stay with me. Because what happens in the next 8 hours reveals something about Chinese naval strategy that changes everything about South China Sea operations, and why the sudden dispersal after 8 hours matters more than the standoff itself. At 9:47 a.m., the Mustin's radar detected 3 contacts. Chinese warships. Distance, 22 miles. Converging courses. Standard Chinese response to American freedom of navigation operations. Park ordered standard procedures. Maintain course and speed. Monitor contacts. Prepare to maneuver if necessary. This is routine encounter. Stay professional. Her crew had seen this before. Chinese ships would approach, make radio calls, maybe conduct close pass, then resume their patrols. Intimidating but predictable. At 10:03 a.m., the Chinese warships were 12 miles away, still closing, still coordinated. Park noticed their formation. Too precise, too deliberate. They weren't approaching for observation, they were positioning for interception. She ordered heightened readiness. All stations, increased alert status. Chinese vessels are conducting coordinated approach. Prepare for close encounter. Maintain international law. We have every right to be here. At 10:11 a.m., the Chinese warships were 6 miles away. Park could see them through binoculars now. Type 052D destroyers. Modern, well-armed, and a Type 054A frigate. The three ships were spreading into line formation, directly across Mustin's path. Not approaching from side, not conducting parallel course. Positioning to block. Park had never seen this tactic before. Had never heard of Chinese ships actually positioning to physically block American vessels. This was escalation. This was new. This was dangerous. At 10:15 a.m., the Chinese warships stopped, dead in the water, directly in Mustin's path, 3,000 yards ahead. The Mustin was still making 12 knots. Closing distance. Park had to decide. Continue course and force Chinese ships to move, or alter course and acknowledge their claim to control these waters. Neither option was good. Continuing meant potential collision. Altering meant conceding principle. She chose third option. Slow down. Stop before reaching the Chinese ships. See what they intended. Give them opportunity to move. Don't concede. Don't collide. Just wait. See what happens next. At 10:19 a.m., the Mustin came to stop. 500 yards from Chinese line. Close. Uncomfortably close. Within weapons range. Within collision distance if anyone moved. Park ordered battle stations. Not to provoke. To prepare. Because 500 yards from three Chinese warships meant preparing for every possibility. Her crew manned weapons. Activated systems. Locked radars. Ready. Not aggressive. Just ready. At 10:23 a.m., the Chinese radioed. English. Accented but clear. U.S. warship, you are in Chinese territorial waters. You must leave immediately. Change course or face consequences. Park responded professionally, firmly. Chinese vessels, this is U.S. Navy destroyer Mustin. We are in international waters conducting lawful transit. We will not alter course. Request you move your vessels and allow us to continue our legal operations. The Chinese response was immediate. You are in violation of Chinese sovereignty. You have no right to be here. Leave now. Park tried again. We will not leave international waters. We are operating under international law. Move your vessels. The Chinese refused. We will not move. This is Chinese water. You leave or we take action. Stalemate. Both sides claiming legal authority. Both refusing to move. Both prepared for combat. Both hoping to avoid it. The standoff had begun and would last 8 hours. 8 hours where crews maintained battle stations, where weapons stayed aimed, where radio silence replaced dialogue, where patience became strategy, where waiting became tactic, where time itself became weapon. At 11 a.m., 1 hour into standoff, nothing had changed. Ships still at 500 yards, still facing off, still waiting. Park's crew was tense, alert. Maintaining readiness was exhausting. Standing at battle stations for hours, watching, waiting. knowing that any second could bring combat. That relaxing meant dying. That vigilance was survival. The mental strain was worse than physical. The uncertainty, the anticipation, the knowledge that someone else controlled what happened next. The Chinese commanders would decide when this ended, how it ended, whether it ended peacefully or violently. At 1 p.m., 3 hours into standoff, Park rotated her crew. Half maintained stations, half rested. 8. Used facilities, prepared for extended operation, because this might last all day, might last all night. Chinese had shown no sign of moving, no indication of backing down, just sitting there, blocking, waiting, testing American patience, testing American resolve, testing how long U.S. Navy destroyer would tolerate being blocked by Chinese warships in international waters. At 3 p.m., 5 hours into standoff, Chinese changed tactics. The center destroyer activated fire control radar, locked onto Mustin. The same escalation Russians had used in Black Sea. The same aggressive signal. Preparation for missile launch. Warning that weapons were ready. Threat that combat was seconds away. Park's crew detected it immediately. Alarm sounding. "Captain, Chinese vessel has locked fire control radar. We are targeted." Park's decision was instant. Lock our weapons onto Chinese vessels. All 3. Fire control radar active. Prepare to engage if they launch. Do not fire unless I order or they fire first. Rules of engagement apply. Stay ready. The Mustin's Aegis system locked onto all 3 Chinese ships. American missiles ready. American guns aimed. Mutual targeting. Mutual threat. Mutual deterrence. Or mutual destruction if anyone pulled trigger. At 3:47 p.m., the Chinese radar turned off. Fire control lock released. De-escalation. Or probe completed. They'd tested American response time. Measured how quickly Mustin achieved targeting solution. Evaluated American readiness. Collected data. The lock hadn't been preparation for attack. It was intelligence gathering. Tactical assessment. Learning American capabilities. That's what this was about. Not territory. Not sovereignty. But information. Data. Understanding how American destroyers respond under pressure. How quickly they react. How accurately they target. How professionally they maintain discipline. Everything that helps plan for future conflict. At 6 p.m., 8 hours into standoff, sun was setting. Park had kept her ship at battle stations all day. Crew was exhausted. Rotating rest periods helped, but maintaining combat readiness for 8 hours was brutal. Physical, mental, emotional, and night was coming. Night operations were more dangerous, visibility reduced, mistakes more likely. If Chinese maintained standoff through night, risk increased exponentially. Park radioed her situation to 7th Fleet, requested guidance, permission to break standoff if necessary, permission to use force if Chinese physically blocked or threatened. The response was careful, political. Maintain position. Do not fire unless fired upon. Do not back down. Hold your ground. We're monitoring situation. Be patient. At 6:34 p.m., 8 hours and 15 minutes into standoff, the Chinese warships suddenly moved. Not slowly, not gradually, simultaneously. All 3. Turned away, increased speed, departed the area. No radio call, no explanation, no acknowledgement, just left. As coordinated as their arrival, as sudden as their positioning. The standoff ended as abruptly as it began. Park maintained alert status. Suspicious. Was this genuine departure? Or repositioning for different approach? She waited 30 minutes. Chinese ships kept going. disappeared from radar. Finally, she secured from battle stations, resumed patrol. The Mustin continued its freedom of navigation operation. 8 hours late, but continuing. Not deterred, not intimidated, not acknowledging Chinese claim to these waters. At 7:15 p.m., Park filed formal report, documenting everything. Times, positions, communications, Chinese actions, American responses, the fire control radar lock, the 8-hour standoff, the sudden departure, everything for the record, everything for analysis, everything for understanding what just happened and what it meant for future operations. Because this wasn't isolated incident. This was tactic. This was strategy. This was China testing new approach to contesting American presence in South China Sea. But here's what the report couldn't capture. Here's what analysis would take weeks to determine. Here's what the sudden departure revealed about orders from Beijing, and why those 8 hours were tests that American Navy passed but Chinese Navy learned from. The Chinese warships had orders to block the Mustin, to force confrontation, to see how Americans responded, to measure resolve, to test patience, to evaluate tactics. But they also had orders about when to disengage, not based on American actions, based on time. 8 hours was predetermined. 8 hours of standoff, 8 hours of data collection, 8 hours of psychological pressure, then departure. Regardless of American response, the entire operation was experiment, controlled, measured, designed to learn without triggering combat, to push limits without breaking them, to test without fighting, to gather intelligence while maintaining plausible deniability. We were exercising in our waters. American ship entered. We held position, then resumed patrol. That was Chinese narrative, ignoring that they positioned to block, that they refused to move, that they escalated with fire control radar, that they conducted calculated intimidation operation. The intelligence analysis revealed the pattern. This was fourth such incident in 6 months. Different American ships, different Chinese squadrons, same tactic. Position to block, hold for several hours, gather data, depart. Each time, Chinese measured American response. Each time, they refined their understanding. Each time, they learned what American Navy would do, how they'd respond, how long they'd wait, how they'd react to radar locks, how they'd communicate. Everything that helps plan for conflict. Everything that reduces uncertainty in war. Everything that increases Chinese confidence that they can control escalation, can push Americans, can intimidate without fighting, can assert sovereignty claims without triggering combat. But the analysis also revealed Chinese vulnerability. They blinked first, after 8 hours. After data collection was complete, they departed, didn't maintain standoff through night, didn't physically block Mustin from continuing patrol, didn't prevent American freedom of navigation operation, just delayed it, just made it uncomfortable, just demonstrated presence, but didn't stop it. Couldn't stop it without using force, and using force meant war. War that China isn't ready for. War that Chinese Navy knows it would lose. Because 1 destroyer versus 3 warships isn't representative of full conflict. Full conflict involves carrier strike groups, submarine force, air power, global American naval supremacy that China can't match. Not yet. Maybe not for decades. The standoff proved that Chinese could block 1 destroyer for 8 hours, but couldn't prevent American Navy from operating in South China Sea. Could harass, could intimidate, could collect intelligence, but couldn't control, couldn't dominate, couldn't exclude. That's what January 12th really proved. Not Chinese strength, Chinese limitations. They tried maximum pressure short of violence, achieved minimal results, delayed one patrol by 8 hours, collected some tactical data, made some propaganda claims, but didn't change fundamental reality. American Navy operates in South China Sea, will continue operating, will continue asserting freedom of navigation, will continue challenging Chinese territorial claims, and Chinese Navy will continue testing, probing, measuring, but ultimately accommodating. Because alternative is combat. Combat is war. War is devastation. Devastation is unacceptable to both sides. Commander Park received Navy Commendation Medal for her handling of the incident. 8 hours of maintaining composure under pressure, of not escalating, of not backing down, of holding position while being threatened, of demonstrating resolve without provocative action. The medal recognized that sometimes victory is waiting. Sometimes strength is patience. Sometimes the hardest thing is doing nothing while pressure mounts and threats materialize and enemy surrounds you. She'd done that for 8 hours, with 3 Chinese warships at 500 yards, with weapons aimed at her ship, with crew exhausted and night approaching and no guarantee of peaceful resolution. She'd waited, held, won by not losing. That's naval leadership. That's what medals recognize. But Park doesn't talk about courage, doesn't claim heroism, just says she followed orders, maintained position, did her job, let Chinese make decisions, let them choose escalation or de-escalation, let them determine how this ended. She just stayed, didn't leave, didn't yield, didn't acknowledge Chinese claims, just existed in international waters. That's all that was required. That's all she did. Just existed. For 8 hours, while 3 Chinese warships tried to make existence untenable, tried to make her leave through pressure, through intimidation, threat of violence. She didn't leave. That's victory. Simple, quiet, unspectacular, but complete. The South China Sea hasn't changed. Chinese Navy still conducts these operations, still blocks American ships, still demands they leave Chinese waters. American Navy still refuses, still maintains freedom of navigation operations, still asserts international law. The standoffs continue, sometimes hours, sometimes days, always tense, always dangerous, always controlled by both sides because combat serves neither. Both governments want to avoid war. Both militaries prepare for war. Both sides push limits. Both sides stop short. That's modern great power competition. Not peace, not war. Something in between. Managed tension, controlled aggression, persistent challenge, continuous response, until someone miscalculates, until patience fails, until pressure exceeds tolerance, until standoff becomes shootout, until those 8 hours become minutes, until those 500 yards become impact distance, until game of chicken becomes actual collision. January 12, 2026 proved it's possible. Proved both sides can face off for 8 hours without firing. Proved restraint works. Proved patience succeeds. Proved that sometimes doing nothing is doing everything. But it also proved the danger. Proved how close routine operation came to combat. Proved that 500 yards between warships means seconds between peace and war. Proved that fire control radar lock means moments between standoff and shooting. Proved That 8 hours of battle stations means 8 hours of trigger fingers, means 8 hours where malfunction or miscommunication or misunderstanding means destruction, means 8 hours of vulnerability to error, to accident, to catastrophic mistake that neither side wanted but both would have to fight. That's truth from South China Sea. That's lesson from 8-hour standoff. That Chinese Navy will block. American Navy will hold. Both will threaten. Neither will fire. Until they do. Until one day. One standoff. One tense encounter. Someone pulls trigger. Someone launches missile. Someone makes mistake. And 8 hours of patience becomes 8 minutes of combat. Becomes 8 years of war. Becomes 8 decades of consequences. That's what January 12th taught. That peace requires patience. That patience has limits. That limits get tested. That tests sometimes fail. That failure means war. And war in South China Sea means catastrophe that makes every previous conflict look small. Commander Park knows this. Thinks about it every day. Remembers the 8 hours. Remembers the 500 yards. Remembers Chinese warships surrounding her destroyer. Remembers weapons aimed. Remembers the fire control radar lock. Remembers the exhausted crew maintaining battle stations. Remembers the sun setting and wondering if night would bring combat. Remembers the sudden Chinese departure. Remembers the relief, the tension release, the realization that today wasn't the day, that this standoff ended peacefully, that patience worked, that next time might be different, that next commander might be different, that next 8 hours might end differently, that next standoff might become shooting, might become war, might become beginning of end. That's what keeps her awake. Not what happened, what almost happened, what could happen, what will happen if patience fails, if restraint breaks, if someone fires, anyone, Chinese, American, doesn't matter who. Matters that 8 hours at 500 yards means 2 navies prepared for combat, means mutual targeting, means mutual destruction available at moment's notice. Means war hanging by thread of discipline, by thread of orders, by thread of restraint. And threads break.